Hi everybody. Today I wanted to do a quick rundown on the Itential MCP tagging system. A lot of energy has been put into this to make sure that we got necessary tooling when you're building things like agents that are based on a persona. Uh, by default, most MCPs load a lot of tools into the LLMs, which cause, from a context engineering standpoint, it becomes a nightmare and it confuses the LLMs very quickly, right? When there's a lot of tools and too much information. So we built a pretty robust tagging on the Itential MCP so that you can control what tools get loaded based on what's configured. By default, I have here my very basic config. I got my transport log level. I exclude tags, beta, and experimental. For the purposes of this, we'll exclude those. That's best practice to exclude any tools that are in development. And then I have my platform config as well. This is a placeholder file. I will be following along in the background with my real config that has my keys and my true server. By default, when you don't have any tagging, filtering, or anything like that included, we will load every single tool. So we'll use Cloud Desktop to illustrate the point here. So when I go to Cloud Desktop, it has my default config with no filtering. I get every single tool. Now, there's a lot of tools offered here that serve different purposes. Some of them run scripts and workflows. Some of them are custom services that I have created. We'll talk about those in a second. Some of them run workflows, but some of them also serve for platform administration. If you look at get applications, restart application, adapters, things like that. And there's a little bit of a clash on roles there, right? If you're using the platform as a customer to only run workflows and provision services, you don't necessarily have the role or should have the permissions to restart an application or an adapter on the platform. That's where the tagging system comes in, right? We can actually restrict what tools the operator or the assistant gets access to in order to accomplish what they need to accomplish. So what we'll do very quickly is start with the basic example here of individual tool tags, static. So every tool is a function in code. Every tool gets its own tag based on the tool's name. So in this case, we're going to include only get health, start workflow, get workflows, and describe job. And this would be what the normal, super basic for showcasing workflows would look like, right? You need to be able to get all the workflows to know what's exposed. Also, this gives you the parameters to execute every workflow, start workflow to trigger them, and then you need to describe job to monitor the job based on the job ID, which is returned by this call, and then get health just to have a baseline of how to, be able to talk to the platform. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go kill my Claude. You have to restart your agent every single time, or your MCP process rather, whenever you're doing this. If you're using Docker, you have to restart your container every time you do this, or rebuild it depending on how you're passing the config. After restarting my Claude, I can see that if I go to included tools, now I only have describe job, get workflows, start workflow, and get health. Really cool, right? I can actually filter down to only the 4 tools that I need. And this would be the mode that I would go with deploying this, right? I go firewall rule style on a need to know basis. I'd only provide the tools that I needed instead of providing them all and pray for the best, right? Again, LLMs get really confused. Now, also, one thing that's really cool is that we actually have tags that are based on predefined collections. So if you look at this set here, we got configuration manager health and configuration manager and health. So those will actually enable a series of tools that are related to configuration management, right? Run command, get devices, and so forth. And also health for the platform. So this is just an interesting combination just to showcase. I really don't know what tools will show up here. So let's go and try it out. I'm going to kill my Claude again. And I'll open my Claude desktop. And let's see what shows up. So these tool collections are all documented in the repo. There's a tags.md file in the docs. So now you can see what got loaded based on the config manager tag and the health tag. Very cool. So I can get health. I can render templates, a bunch of the configuration manager tools. Apply config to devices that are brokered through the platform. Backup a device's config, etc. Run compliance plans. Very cool. Awesome. All right, let's look at the next example. So I'll go ahead and disable that. Nope, not that. Like that. And then let's look at the next one over. So let's look at experimental. And I don't know what we'll load off of there. But what we'll do is we'll actually, let's remove experimental out of here. because we're going to include them, and we're going to exclude beta. And this is something that the Itential MCP actually lets you create your own tags in the system and also bring your own tools. So you could use this experimental tag yourselves if you want to experiment with different tools in the platform. So you could actually bring your own tools if you wanted to. Okay, so we're gonna exclude beta. Oh, that's how we want it. Include experimental, exclude beta. Let's make sure that files are saved, and let's kill our Claude. Let's open Claude. All right, no tools available at the moment. Okay, so no tools are marked as experimental. Maybe they're excluded as beta as well. So let me go do that. Let me disable the beta tag, and there might be something that we get out of that. Let's see. And I have not rehearsed a lot of this stuff, so we'll see. Sort of improvise, just make sure that it's organic and we kind of showcase the capability there. Okay. It's actually not letting me. It's not liking that tag, so it's okay. We'll move on. We'll move on to the next one. Okay, so now let's go and try how we do multiples of those. So it's combine approach. If you start combining multiple sets of tools, say doing something like this, where we have configuration manager, all the tools from configuration manager that we saw earlier, also get resources, which is a lifecycle manager tool, describe resources, run action, and experimental. We'll disable that because we had issues with that one. So let's disable that, and let's see what gets included. So let's try those. So you can combine these tags as you see fit. I like the direct tool approach where I just create individual tool tags, but you can do what you need in order to accomplish your goals and assign your agents with the tools that they need. Okay, very cool. So that one works very well. We got the config manager stuff that we saw before, and we also have the LCM stuff. So describe resource, get resources, run action. Awesome. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's see. So let's look at excluding. Perfect. There we go. So let's look at excluding tags. So by default, we saw earlier that we load all the tools. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to exclude, only exclude. So you could also be having, load all the tools and then exclude just the ones that you want. So I'm going to exclude all the adapters stuff, stop application, restart application. Let's go do that. Let's make sure that I got it all on both sides. And then I'm going to kill my Claude, open Claude again. And let's see, MCP loaded. Perfect. Okay, so if I do start application, start application is not on the exclusion list, right? No, it is not. Only stop, restart. Okay, so stop and restart. Restart. Okay, restart's not there. And stop is not there. And then adapters. Adapters. Awesome. So I can't add adapters. I can't restart adapters. So you can actually have a very granular level of restriction on the amount of tools that you want to give it. If you want to create an agent that it's dedicated to managing the apps of the platform, but not the adapters, that you could do things like this, right? You could tell it, you can only stop and restart. You can't start applications that are, stopped already or something like that. Or you could use the restart function only. So, lots of granular controls on the things that you can do. And then the last thing that I was going to show is, okay, so let's scroll down here to the bottom. I've spaced out this config just to make sure that we're not distracted. I wanted to show these. So I want to do here, let's remove these tags. So these are actually dynamic bindings. I will do a separate video on this. This is a little bit more involved. But what we'll do is, one of the things that we're capable of doing is actually have dedicated endpoints. So these are workflow endpoints. We can actually create dedicated tools out of workflows. I have the start workflow capability already, but we also provide this, and this is called the dynamic bindings functionality. And what that does is that loads this tool as a service. And it's a tool that the MCP loads on startup. Typically, this is, a little bit more complex to grasp as a concept, but essentially, if I don't include these, I can still trigger a workflow, but I have to go and fetch the workflows first in order to understand the parameters for it. These I can just include as tools directly, so they get loaded on MCP startup. And this is really cool because if I wanted to only build an agent that only did these things, then I could just build these two services in here and move on. And those are the only tools that I give it access to. So let's go ahead and do, I have a few dynamic services on mine. What I will do is we'll do the AWS EC2 list. So let's give this a tag here. I want to do that. And then port turn up service, we're going to give it a tag of, okay, so we're going to do this. This is what we're going to do. Tags equals AWS. And then we're going to do over here on port turn up service, we're going to do a tag of port turn up. So we're going to do that. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have tags equals port turn up, and then tags, let's just do proper spacing here, equals AWS. So now what we got to do is in our config, we're going to go back and create a new include tags section, include tags equals AWS port turn up. Okay, let's give that a shot. I'm going to do that on my real file. I'm not going to exclude anything. And that's what we're going to do and see what happens. Kill my Claude. Open it up. Let's see. Okay, my MCP is up. Awesome. Look at that. So now I only have two things in there. If you go back, I'm going to switch over the screen really quick. If we go to the bottom, I have a port turn up service, which is of type endpoint. So that means this is a workflow that does a port turn up. And it's a port turn up service orchestrated with IPAM and all those types of things. And I also have an AWS EC2 list, which is a service. That means it's a gateway service. So this is either a Python script or an Ansible playbook. So I have both types. And I only, just by virtue of creating these tags here, dynamically, I can load those only. So that means I can just create an agent out of workflows only or out of scripts only. Now, by default, all these dynamic tools get the tag dynamic on them. So that means that if you have 17 of this, you could just say include tags dynamic, and it will include all of those things. But I can also have the ability to do it custom. So if I wanted to build workflows and scripts and playbooks and tofu plans that are all AWS related, and I want to tag them with the AWS tag, that means that I can create an agent that's only doing AWS things. Same thing for iOS things or Arista things or etc. Right? Lots and lots of capability here. Lots of stuff that you can accomplish with this tagging system. Is one of those things, again, that I wanted to really document. I've been using it extensively for quite a bit for the type of demonstrations that we do. It helps me keep context very tight on the tools that we got. So it's really, really, really powerful. I hope you enjoy this and get some information out of it. And if you have questions, just let us know. Drop them in the comments. Thank you for tuning in.